Welcome to the channel, friends. Today we will reveal one of the most intriguing secrets of the prince of the automotive industry. Imagine cars that could have changed everything, but they were never invited to the roads. Why? They were too wild, too powerful, or simply dangerous for ordinary drivers. And all of these are the creations of the legendary Chevrolet Company. A huge request to subscribe to the channel to support the author, and do not forget to click the bell so as not to miss the next videos. Thank you. You have most likely never heard of these cars, because Chevrolet tried to erase them from history. But today, we bring them out of the shadows. These are 10 banned Chevrolet cars that you are better off not knowing about. Number 10. 1965 Mako Shark II. This wasn't just a concept car, it was a warning shot from the future. Born in the height of the space race, the Mako Shark II wasn't designed to just look fast, it looked alien. Sharp angles, gills cut into the bodywork, a pointed nose that made it look like a missile on wheels. Even the paint faded from blue to silver, like a deep-sea predator lurking in the shadows. No wonder it was named after a shark. Underneath, though, this wasn't just design theater. The Mako Shark II had serious performance ideas baked in. It featured experimental suspension setups, a fiber-optic dashboard, hidden headlights, side pipes, and a power bulge hood that meant business. The car screamed speed and style, a rolling piece of sci-fi art. So why was it banned from production? Here's the deal. Chevy loved the Mako Shark II so much, it became the design foundation for the 1968 Corvette C3. But as much as the public loved it, government safety regulations, insurance pressures, and the looming fuel crisis killed any chance of the real deal hitting the road. Features like the ultra-low stance, exposed pipes, and razor-sharp bumpers were a no-go for federal safety standards. And here's the twist. GM crushed the original prototype. That's right, the car that inspired an entire generation of Corvettes was destroyed before it could see daylight. It was simply too wild, too risky, and too futuristic for 1965. But its spirit lived on. The Mako Shark II was never sold, never road legal, and never offered to the public. Yet its DNA lives in every Corvette C3 that followed. It was a vision of what could have been, and what almost was. If Chevy had released it as is, it might have changed the game forever. So what do you think? Would you have driven a Mako Shark II if it had hit the streets? Let us know in the comments. Hit that like, and don't forget to subscribe for more forgotten legends. Keep their wheels spinning and your stories loud. Number 9. 1968 Chevrolet Caprice. A full-size sleeper that brought elegance, comfort, and a little hidden power to the late 60s. Today, when people think of the late 60s, they usually think of the Camaro, GTO, or Mustang. But the Caprice? It was for those who wanted something different. Not flashy, not loud, just pure American style, with power when you needed it. The 1968 Caprice was Chevrolet's answer to luxury on a budget. It topped the full-size Chevrolet lineup just above the Impala, and it looked the part. Chrome trim, fender flares, hidden windshield wipers, and that unmistakable Coke bottle shape. Pulling up to a restaurant or driveway in one, you looked like you had it all. But don't let the clean lines and gentlemanly styling fool you. Under the hood, you could fit a 396 cubic inch V8 or even a monstrous 427 cubic inch big block, turning this cruiser into a highway beast. Some models even came with dual exhaust and limited slip differentials, not typical of luxury cars. Inside the cabin, think wide seats, wood grain trim, a tilt steering column, and optional air conditioning. This was a car built to ride in comfort, not to bounce around like a stripped-down muscle car. So why aren't many people talking about the 1968 today? Simple. It wasn't flashy. It didn't win races. It wasn't built to be remembered, but to be driven. Quietly, smoothly, reliably. And that's exactly what it did for thousands of families across America. Today, clean 1968 Caprices are surprisingly affordable. You can still find surviving examples for $10,000 to $20,000, especially the two-door hardtops. But collectors are starting to take notice. That combination of luxury, power, and understated elegance, it looks great in an old-school style. So, if you're looking for a piece of real late 60s American steel without the muscle car tax, a 1968 Chevrolet Caprice might be your ticket. Thanks for sticking with us, friends. Like and subscribe to stay up to date with new releases of forgotten classics. And the next car is number 8. 1964 Chevrolet Malibu SS. The car that laid the groundwork for the legendary Chevelle and helped ignite the muscle car revolution. Now, 1964 was a turning point. Ford had just introduced the Mustang, Pontiac had the GTO, and Chevrolet, they quietly rolled out the Malibu SS, the supersport version of their all-new Chevelle midsize model. It wasn't the loudest or fastest car on the block, but it was a sign of what was coming. From the outside, the '64 Malibu SS had clean, squared-off lines, a wide stance, and subtle chrome accents. It looked sporty, but still respectable. You had your choice of coupe or convertible, and SS badging let people know this wasn't your average family ride. Now, under the hood, this is where it gets interesting. Most early Malibu SS models came with a 283 cubic inch small block V8 pushing out up to 220 horsepower. But if you wanted more, Chevy offered the 327, giving you up to 300 horsepower, depending on how deep you were willing to go into the option sheet. And keep in mind, the car weighed just over 3,000 pounds. That's a solid power-to-weight ratio for the early 60s. Inside, the SS package added bucket seats, a center console, floor shifter, and special trim. It wasn't luxury like a Cadillac, but it gave young buyers the sporty feeling they were looking for without breaking the bank. So why is the 1964 Malibu SS important? Because it was Chevrolet's first big move toward what would become one of the greatest nameplates in muscle car history, the Chevelle SS. This was the prelude, the warning shot. The Malibu SS opened the door, and just 1 year later, in '65, Chevy would walk through it with bigger engines and more aggressive styling. Today, the 1964 Malibu SS is a bit of a sleeper in the collector world. It's not as expensive as the later big block Chevelles, but it has something even rarer: history. You can still find decent examples in the $20,000 to $35,000 range, depending on condition and options. Restored cars with the 327, they're going up fast. So if you're hunting for a true piece of muscle car history and you want to beat the price curve, the '64 Malibu SS is absolutely worth a look. Number 7. 1973 Chevrolet Laguna S3. It wasn't flashy like the Chevelle SS, and it didn't roar off the line like a Z28. But make no mistake, the Laguna S3 was Chevrolet's secret weapon, a NASCAR-born street machine that most people forgot even existed. So, what was it? In 1973, the Chevelle lineup got a major redesign: softer curves, bigger bumpers, and a new colonnade-style roofline. That's when Chevrolet introduced a new premium model, the Laguna. And at the top of that line was the Laguna S3, a performance-oriented coupe designed not just for the street, but for the high banks of Daytona and Talladega. At first glance, it looked almost too refined. Body-colored urethane front bumper, aerodynamic nose, subtle S3 badging. But under the hood, that's where the real story starts. Buyers could spec the Laguna S3 with Chevrolet's big boys, the 454 cubic inch V8, making up to 270 horsepower, even with early 70s emission standards. It wasn't the brute force of the late 60s, but this car could still move. And thanks to its sloped front end and sleek profile, it dominated NASCAR in the mid-70s, until NASCAR actually banned it from competition in 1977 for being too aerodynamic. Yup, banned for being too good. Now here's the catch. Despite its racing success, the Laguna S3 was never properly marketed as a muscle car. Insurance rates were skyrocketing, the oil crisis had arrived, and GM was quietly steering away from performance. That meant the Laguna S3 got lost in the shuffle, overshadowed by the Chevelle SS it was supposed to replace. Today, very few people remember it. Even fewer realize what it accomplished on the track. And that's a shame, because the 1973 Laguna S3 was one of the last real muscle coupes of its era, fast, rare, and oddly sophisticated. If you can find one today, prices are still surprisingly reasonable, $15,000 to $25,000 for solid drivers. But clean, original 454 cars, those are creeping toward $40,000 and rising fast. So there you have it, the 1973 Chevrolet Laguna S3, a car that wasn't just good, it was too good to survive. Number 6. 1948 Chevrolet Fleetmaster, one of the most iconic American cars of the late 1940s and a true symbol of an era that was ready to move forward. Now, 1948 was a special year. World War II was over, factories were back in full swing, and Americans were eager to buy new cars after years of wartime restrictions. Chevrolet responded with the Fleetmaster, and while it wasn't exactly groundbreaking in design, it was exactly what the public wanted: reliable, stylish, and affordable. Under the hood, you got a 216 cubic inch inline-six pumping out a modest 90 horsepower, paired with a 3-speed manual transmission. It wasn't built to race, it was built to cruise, and it did that beautifully. Smooth ride, soft suspension, and a cabin that felt roomy and well-finished for its time. The design? Classic late 40s Americana. Rounded fenders, a bold grille, chrome accents, and wide white-wall tires. Whether you pick the sedan, coupe, convertible, or station wagon, the Fleetmaster had presence. It looked like success, and it sold like it too. Over 200,000 units in 1948 alone. But here's where it gets interesting. 1948 was also the last year of this body style. In 1949, Chevy introduced an all-new modern look, which made the 48 Fleetmaster the final bow for the pre-war design language. That makes it a collector favorite today, especially in original condition. What's even more surprising? You don't need a $1 million garage to own one. Prices for a well-kept Fleetmaster can range from $12,000 to $25,000, depending on condition and body style. Convertibles and woody wagons, of course, can command a premium, but overall, this is one of the most affordable vintage classics still available to average enthusiasts. So, if you're after something with vintage charm, a timeless silhouette, and the kind of build quality that helped define the American auto industry, the 1948 Chevrolet Fleetmaster is a name worth remembering. Number 5. 1977 Chevrolet Monza Mirage, and it's one of the oddest and most short-lived performance packages Chevy ever approved. Now, let's get one thing straight. This wasn't a factory-built muscle car in the traditional sense. The Monza Mirage started life as a regular Chevy Monza 2+2. Then it was shipped off to a company called Michigan Auto Techniques, where it got a wild plastic body kit. Deep front air dam, flared wheel arches, rear spoiler, and a stripe package that screamed racing car, even if it wasn't one. It looked fast, it looked aggressive, but under the hood, you'd most likely find a 305 cubic inch V8 making about 145 horsepower. Not terrible for the era, but not exactly the rocket ship the bodywork suggested. Some came with smaller V6s or even inline 4s, which made the whole thing feel more like a cosmetic illusion than a performance monster. Chevrolet never officially listed the Mirage as a separate model. That's right, it didn't even show up in the brochures. It was a quiet, dealer option special, built in limited numbers and mostly forgotten once the muscle car era faded. Experts estimate less than 5,000 units were made. So why is it on our list of ultra-banned or forgotten cars? Because it represents everything weird about American car culture in the late 70s, a time when muscle was gone, emissions were killing performance, and manufacturers were trying to keep the dream alive with appearance packages and clever marketing. Today, finding a real Monza Mirage is a challenge. Many were stripped for parts or left to rot. But among collectors, it has a small cult following, not because it was fast, but because it was so bold, so unnecessary, and so 1977. Prices? They're still surprisingly low. If you can find one, expect to pay anywhere from $8,000 to $18,000, depending on originality and condition. But beware, body parts for the Mirage kit are nearly impossible to source, making restoration a serious commitment. The 1977 Monza Mirage, half show car, half time capsule, and 100 strange. A forgotten Chevy that tried to be a hero in the most disco way possible. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more bizarre blasts from the automotive past. Number 4. 1970 Chevrolet Kingswood Wagon. This wasn't your average family car. It was big, it was brash, and it had some class underneath all that chrome and metal trim. Let's be clear, the Kingswood wasn't some stripped-down grocery delivery station wagon. It was a full-size Chevrolet wagon, slotted just below the range-topping Kingswood estate, and it shared its massive body with the Caprice and Impala. It was more than 18 feet long and built like a commuter tank. You could order a Kingswood with a modest 350 cubic inch small block engine, enough to haul the kids and a trailer, but if you knew what you were doing at the dealership, you could check the specs and walk away with something more sinister, a 454 cubic inch big block V8. That's right, a muscle car engine in a wagon. It made 390 horsepower, and while no one officially drag raced their wagons, let's just say this sleeper had enough power to surprise a few Mustangs at a stoplight. Inside, the Kingswood was a classic early 60s GM. Bench seats, wood grain trim, and enough cargo space to fit a full set of furniture or half your kid's crew. And the clamshell tailgate was a mechanical feat. The rear window rose into the roof and the tailgate dropped into the bumper. It was sleek, futuristic, and hasn't been copied since. But like many big wagons of the era, the Kingswood was engulfed by rising gas prices, tighter emissions laws, and a growing American obsession with downsizing. By 1973, the Kingswood name was gone, and the wagon itself quietly faded into oblivion. Today, it's rare to find, especially with big blocks and original trim. But the good news? These beasts haven't quite reached collector status yet. Decent examples can still be found for $12,000 to $20,000, depending on engine and condition. Try finding a muscle car with that kind of pedigree and price tag. So, if you're looking for something bold, unusual, and completely overlooked, the 1970 Chevrolet Kingswood wagon is worth a look. It's not just a station wagon. It's a dream from an era when even a family car could still conquer. Thanks for staying with us. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll continue to tell you stories from the forgotten corners of American automotive history. Number 3. 1965 Chevrolet Corvair Corsa. A car so advanced for its time, it got buried by scandal, lawsuits, and a book that changed the auto industry forever. Let's start with what made the Corvair Corsa so different. This wasn't your average Chevrolet. It had a rear-mounted, air-cooled flat-six engine, just like a Porsche. It didn't have a front radiator. It didn't look like a Mustang or a GTO. It looked European, sleek, and futuristic. It was Chevy's boldest move. And the Corsa? That was the performance version. In 1965, you could get it with a turbocharged 180 horsepower engine from a 2.7-liter flat-six. That doesn't sound huge today, but remember, this was a compact car in the mid-60s. It weighed under 2,700 pounds and handled like no other American car on the market. Independent rear suspension, quick steering, and a 4-speed manual made it a real driver's machine. But just as the Corsa started to shine, the storm hit. In 1965, Ralph Nader published Unsafe at Any Speed, and the Corvair was his target. His argument? The early models, especially the 1960-63 versions, had a swing axle suspension that could lead to sudden oversteer and dangerous rollovers. He wasn't wrong about those early issues, but by 1965, Chevrolet had completely redesigned the suspension to fix it. Ironically, the 1965 Corvair Corsa was the safest and best handling version ever made, but the damage was done. Public opinion turned, sales dropped, and even though the Corvair stayed in production until 1969, GM quietly killed off the Corsa trim after 1966. The car that once challenged convention was now considered taboo. Today, the 1965 Corvair Corsa is a hidden gem. It never became a muscle car legend, it never got the Hollywood spotlight, and you won't see it at every car meet. But enthusiasts know this was one of the most innovative American cars ever built. The best part? You can still find decent examples for under $15,000. That's right, a turbocharged rear-engine classic with real handling chops for less than a used Honda Civic. So if you want something different, something bold, misunderstood, and ahead of its time, the 65 Corvair Corsa deserves a spot in your garage. Number 2. 1987 Chevrolet Camaro IROC Z. This wasn't just a car, it was a cultural statement. A V8-powered slice of American rebellion that wore its name like a championship belt. So, what's the deal with the IROC Z? Let's start with the name. IROC stands for International Race of Champions, a race series that pitted the best drivers from NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula One in identically prepared Camaros. Chevy was proud, and they branded it right on the car. The IROC Z wasn't some appearance package. It was a real performance upgrade to the third-gen Camaro. In 1987, the IROC Z came with several engine choices, but the real star was the 5.7-liter tuned port injection V8 cranking out 225 horsepower. That might not sound wild today, but back then, in the smog-choked, emissions-choked late 80s, it was serious firepower. And it wasn't just about straight-line speed. The IROC Z had upgraded suspension, a lower ride height, better shocks, front and rear anti-roll bars, and wider Goodyear Gatorback tires. This car could corner, and that mattered, especially when it was battling the Mustang GT in the muscle car wars of the era. And the looks? Pure 1980s perfection. The IROC Z sat low and wide, with sharp angles, a ground effects body kit, and those signature bold graphics down the door. It looked fast parked at the mall, and even faster tearing down the highway. Now here's the twist. Despite its fame, the IROC Z quietly faded away. By 1990, the IROC racing sponsorship ended, and Chevrolet pulled the plug on the nameplate. The car itself continued as a Camaro Z28, but the IROC Z badge, that badge that meant everything in the 80s, was gone. Today, the 1987 IROC Z is finally getting the respect it deserves. Prices are climbing, but you can still find decent examples in the $12,000 to $20,000 range. Not bad for a car that once sat on every kid's bedroom poster. It's not just a Camaro, it's an IROC Z, a time capsule from an era of bold colors, loud engines, and unapologetic American style. Number 1. 1982 Chevrolet S10 Durango. No, not the Dodge SUV. This was a Chevy prototype pickup, and it was so secretive, most people didn't even know it existed. It was built, tested, and then erased. So, what was the S10 Durango? It started with the all-new Chevy S10, which debuted in 1982 as the first compact pickup designed entirely by an American automaker. But deep inside GM's design labs, Chevy was working on something wilder, a sporty, rally-style version of the S10 meant to rival off-road-ready trucks like the Ford Ranger Splash and even hint at Baja influences. The Durango was designed to push the S10's limits. It featured aggressive fender flares, a custom body kit, sport decals, a unique grille, and a lowered stance. It was aiming straight at the youth market, guys who wanted a mini muscle truck, not a farm tool. Under the hood, it wasn't insane, a 2.8-liter V6 or optional 4-cylinder. But that wasn't the point. This was all about attitude and styling. Think El Camino vibes, but in a compact 1980s way. So what happened? Well, insurance concerns, rising emissions regulations, and internal conflicts at GM doomed the S10 Durango before it ever saw a showroom. Chevrolet was worried it wouldn't sell well enough to justify production, especially with sport trucks being a risky bet in the early 80s economy. Only a handful of prototypes were ever built, and today they're nearly impossible to find. If you do stumble across one in a private collection or hidden barn, you're looking at a true unicorn, a Chevy dream that almost was. The 1982 S10 Durango is a reminder of how many ideas GM played with but never released. It had the looks, it had the style, but it just didn't get the green light. And that, my friends, is why it's one of the most banned, forgotten Chevrolet trucks ever made. Stay tuned, because we've got even more cars GM tried to bury, but we're digging them back up. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next banned or forgotten legend.